All right, let's now turn our focus back to China. Less than 2 weeks from now, leaders in China will gather for the twice-in-a-decade Communist Party meet called the CPC Congress. It'll begin on the 16th of this month and will be attended by over 2,000 senior officials. Chinese media says this time the leadership is expected to discuss and calibrate the country's strategy for the next 5 years as it grapples with a complex and arduous environment at home and abroad. The Communist Party of China and its editorial mouthpiece says the Congress would be critical for China to deliver the second of President Xi Jinping's 2 centenaries goals, which will mark China's return to the forefront of global powers by 2049. The Congress is convened every 5 years with an aim to usher in a power transition and changes in leadership. According to the Chinese media, the focus will be on personnel issues and not detailed policy deliberations. The top agenda will include setting long-term strategic goals for the country. The Chinese president will also announce an unprecedented third term as the party chief at the end of the Congress. While Xi retains power, there will, however, be sweeping changes in the rest of the leadership, including the top 2 bodies, the Politburo and the Politburo Standing Committee. All right, we're now joined by Einar Tangen from Beijing. He's a senior fellow at the Taihe Institute. Einar Tangen, thank you so much for speaking to WION. Now, of course, the one thing that is a foregone conclusion is that the Congress will approve a record third term for Xi Jinping, making him the most powerful leader that China has ever had since Mao. This is going to be quite unprecedented, though it's not clear if this also means that he gets to be CCP chief for life. Could you shed some light on that for us? And what, according to you, is the significance of this upcoming Congress, given the current global turmoil that we're witnessing?
Well, it's very important. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that it's going to go the way that people say. I mean, there's very little understanding of how the Chinese politics works. Xi generally has currently 3 very powerful titles that put him in charge of the party, the government, and the military. It's a question of if he's going to retain 3 titles or 2, and also exactly how he's going to bring the next generation. Earlier on, you were talking about 2049, a centennial goal for the party and the country. In order to do that, Xi Jinping will definitely not be around or able to see that day as a leader. So the question is, how do you bring forward the next generations? And that's what's been happening across China. Xi Jinping has bringing along a lot of people that he believes can do that. And in the meantime, those people who have crossed the red line in terms of corruption, which was one of his earliest red lines, have been going. And it doesn't really matter if they were associated with his side, Jiang Zemin's or Hu Jintao's. Whoever is caught doing it has been sent away.
All right. It'll be interesting to see if Xi retains 2 offices or all 3 by the end of this Congress. But I think there can be no argument about the fact that he now is the most powerful leader that China has had since Mao Zedong. But let me ask you this. This Congress comes at a time when the Ukraine war is raging. Russia, of course, is a close ally of China. Ukraine, as we know, is backed by the US and the rest of the Western world. The war has also caused global supply disruptions and an energy crisis. And at the same time, there is growing criticism of China's role, and if I may put it in these words, aggression in the Indo-Pacific, something that has led to heightened tensions between China and the United States and China and other countries in the Indo-Pacific region, such as India itself. Are some of these issues likely to come up in this crucial Congress? How are these likely to be viewed and addressed?
Well, no, in the Party Congress, they won't be discussing specific international goals of foreign policy. This is really about setting the direction for the country. And what you're talking about is other matters that are associated with maintaining the trade routes that China needs to have. So, from one narrative, you expressed it, China's the aggressor. But, there are no, Chinese ships sailing up and down, the straits of other countries and things like this. They see it from China's perspective. The narrative is very simple. The U.S. is trying to push China into a similar situation as what happened with Russia and Ukraine with using Taiwan. The unrelenting daily pressure, the media and the disinformation campaigns that are going out. I mean, just not too long ago, there was this thing about Xi Jinping being under house arrest. What's ironic about that is that 5 years ago, prior to the last meeting, you had the same rumor going on, and there was even something very similar 5 years before that, before he was exceeded. So, I mean, there is obviously a game afoot. There are different narratives, different goals. The U.S. is struggling to maintain hegemony. China is struggling to rise. There are going to be frictions. The question is, how do you handle them? With peace or war?
All right. You know, it's interesting you brought up the tensions in the Taiwanese Strait, because that very situation is also cited as an example by many of China's growing aggression. And like I said, the criticism and the fear that many have expressed is that under Xi's third term, China could actually emerge as a far more aggressive country, especially in the Indo-Pacific. But how do analysts like yourself view this historic and unprecedented third term that Xi is all set to get? What do you think this really means for China and for the region?
Well, I mean, you even compared him twice to Mao. I would actually compare him more to Deng Xiaoping. He's a reformer. He's changing the direction. Mao did that in a sense. I mean, he was the one who created an independent China, but he did not have a lot of experience at governance. A lot of the policies that he tried did not work out. Deng came along, made things very pragmatic. But subsequent to that, there was a problem with corruption. And in a one-party state, you cannot have corruption. So now you have Xi Jinping, who is talking, his problem is a very, very aggressive U.S., which is intent on keeping China down economically and politically. So he's doing what he can to see that over. We're at a very, as we all acknowledge, with the war going on in Ukraine, with the horrible economic circumstances we're looking at, the pandemic. This is a very, very, very difficult time. Changing horses midstream at this point would not seem like a great idea. You need a steady hand at the tiller. And so far, other than your own Modi, there has not been somebody who's been very steady at this, who has not proved to be very aggressive. I mean, Putin has been there a long time, but his actions come in question, not only internationally, but there's a strong feeling. China feels very strongly you do not interfere in the affairs of other countries. So it's very difficult for them to reconcile, Russian troops on Ukrainian soil. On the other hand, they do see that this was a war that was in essence pushed on Russia by the U.S. and Europe with their expansion of NATO. Now, people can have different views about that, but that is the Chinese view.
Okay, that is the Chinese view, even though we've not really seen China, say any tough words to Putin or Russia at any point in this 7-month war. And it's interesting you mentioned Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the context of strong leaders who've emerged in recent years. And yes, the significance of this Congress cannot be understated, coming as it does in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic and right in the middle of the Russia-Ukraine war. And also it's interesting that you talk about how the West is displaying growing aggression against Beijing, because the rest of the world sees Beijing as the aggressor in the region in multiple ways, and has expressed its wariness of China's hegemonic designs and expansionism. But at the end of the day, yes, this Congress will be very, very important, and we'll have to wait and see which direction China moves in at the end of this Congress. Thank you very much, Einar Tangen, for speaking to WION.